Hello and welcome to this short video on the Pricelinks estimating software. Longer versions available on our website at pricelinks.co.uk. This is the opening screen for the estimating software. As you can see, we can create a new estimate, or if we need to search for one, we can go into Open Estimate. But for now, on the short version, I'm just going straight into Recent Estimates, and I'll select the Demonstration Estimate, where we have some sections already set up. You can see in the grid on the right here. If we want, we can open up a tree to the left, and that shows how the sections are laid out. So we have some group headers, main house, ground floor, first floor, and the annex. And within there, we have the takeoff sections, such as if I look at the ground floor here, we have small power, lighting, ventilation. If we want to add a new section, then we just click the add up the top there. We can either select from a drop down menu at the side here, or we can just type in a description. So if I type in demo, quantity, I'm leaving it 1. But for instance, if you're working on, say, a new housing estate, you might have 6 type A's, 10 type B's, etc. And this will allow you to get a selling price for 1 and an extended price for the quantity you enter here. The labour adjustment time, you might use that on perhaps a lighting section where you're working off scaffold, so you can just mark the fitting times up by percentage for that section, then that saves you having to edit every single item in the takeoff. So if I add that one on, and I'll just close this down because I only want to add the one section, you can see we've now got demo section within the ground floor. Just to mention what we're talking about, the times for the section there. If you look at a time for a section, so if we looked at this lighting section here and we weren't happy with it, you can just edit the time here, so you can set a new time in there, or you can put it, mark it up or down by a percentage there, and that will filter through and alter the fit times for that section proportionately. Other things you can do at section level, you can do a copy and paste. In fact, you can do you can copy items within the takeoff if you want to copy individual items, but at section level you might want to copy an entire section. Or if we set a group heading, then it will select all the nodes within that. So going up to the main house, if I select main house, and if I were to do a copy, it would select all those nodes within it. The other thing you can do is you can open up more than one estimate, and then you can copy and paste sections between jobs, or you can indeed clone an entire estimate by going into File and selecting Save As. So quite a few options on the edit side. So if I go into our demo section, it's empty at the moment, but as we add products, they will be listed in the takeoff sheet at the top. The bottom half is our database where we can search for products. So if we want to search for individual items, we've got a product search, or we can pick up assemblies. Assemblies are groups of items that we put together ourselves. It speeds up the estimating. If I show you a simple one to start off with, we've got an MK2 gang switch socket there. So you can see the components to the right. If I want to add a dozen of those onto the job, then in they go. You can see we've now got 12 sockets, 12 boxes, trade price, preferential discounts, which are entered in the database before you when you set the system up, material costs, labour time, and then further over to the right of the screen, it will show the extended totals for those. So that's one type of assembly you could use. If I scroll down a bit further, we've got a trunking run. Now, trunking run is a linear assembly. So what we're saying here is for every metre of cable, I want to add a third of a length of trunking. This assumes that the trunking comes in 3 metre lengths, a third of a coupler, and a couple of fixings. So if we put a quantity of 100 onto the job there, you can see it adds all the various components, multiplies the quantities up. The thing I should show you is I'm showing these by item at the moment. You can also show the display by group. So if we want to our takeoff list just by the assemblies, then that makes it a little clearer to view. So you can see a trunking run there, quantity and costs, times and so on. And the same for that switch socket. And if we want to edit that, we can just double click on it and edit the description, quantity or times. Just going back to the item view, if we want to do some editing a bit more finite, we can either click in the grid here and select some of the fields, such as the quantity, and just edit the quantity there, or we can indeed double click on the grid and that brings the item up, and we could edit other fields from that item, or we can scroll up and down the grid and edit other fields while we're at it. So quite a few options on the editing of the items. Just going on to our product search, lots of different ways we can find items. If we know the code, then we can just type it in. So if I want a bit of cable, fairly straightforward code. So I just pick that up and then I can put in the quantity I want, 25 meters, and just click OK, and that will add it to the job. I'm just going to pause for a second just to show you some of the other fields that you can edit before adding an item to the job. You might want to alter the time for a degree of difficulty. So if you add that, and you can alter the time for this particular input. If you want to alter the time permanently on the database, so next time it comes up with your new time, then just select the option down the bottom, update database time, and it will do that for you. So next time you select it, it will have your new time. I'm currently working on trade prices, but if we wanted to use an agreed price we've got from our supplier, we can switch that there, and that will switch it to an agreed price. So there we go, agreed price rather than the trade price. Other fields we can edit are the fix or phase for the product, and then we've got a couple of groups here, labor and material. I'll show you these in more detail when we're in the markup, but essentially with the system you can set up as many different descriptions for groups as you want, and then you can apply different markups to them. For example, you might want to apply a different level of markup to your cable than you might to your lighting. So all your product ranges from the different manufacturers, you can put those into these different markup groups. So if I click OK and we add that onto the job, now there might be times when we don't know the description. So if we don't know the description, I'll show you some of the other ways of finding items. You're probably going to know a manufacturer, so if you want, you can search by a manufacturer. So if I put in MK and it brings all our MK products up, and if I put Logic in, it will limit it to our Logic range, and we can scroll through, have a look for what we want. You can narrow things a bit further if you want by using the product code. So for instance, if I select wire and accessories and then the subcode on that, if I select sockets, then it's going to display all the sockets from the Logic Plus range of MK. Lots of different ways to find and select items. There is another way you can find items, and that would be to use a description. And then if we enter the description, it will find items within the range here based on the description. So if I put in there T2G, assuming I only want 2 gang, then it will limit all the items being displayed to 2 gang items. If I want to put a little bit more in there, say switch socket, sorry, I've just mistyped there. I'll just edit that and switch socket. Then it's going to find everything with 2 gang and switch socket in the description. So you can use as many or as few of these search criteria as you want, and it will display what you're looking for depending on what's in there. There are also a few more options. If I collect the settings there, and then you can see if you don't want to show price on application items, you can hide those, or if you only want to show favorite items, you can limit it still further. And you can also select to use agreed prices rather than the trade prices if you're using the electrical database, because the electrical database has about 300,000 products, and you have an option for a field for the trade prices, and there's an additional field in the electrical database for an agreed price field where you can enter special prices you get from your suppliers. So there is a couple of other options just to show you here. So if I lose the MK, we're now looking at 2 gang switch sockets. I'll lose that as well, actually, not only in the the wiring accessories. So we're now looking for 2-gang switch sockets within the description of 300,000 products. It starts at ABB and it'll go right the way through all manufacturers that produce items with a match. And so what I want to show you here was this option here. So far I've been ordering items by range, but if I select to order by cost, then it will rearrange the items it finds. So now you see instead of starting ABB, it's got MK and then Skolmore, and then it's listing the items now by the net price. So it's showing where we're going to get the best price for these switch sockets. So quite a number of options for picking up items. I showed you the assemblies a minute ago. What I didn't show you is just how easy it is to build them. So if I clear down our searching, and all I'll do is I'll select new kit, give a description, I'll call it a demo, put in a quantity, that's how many of these assemblies we want to add to the job now. And then once we click OK, it starts showing an animated build button just to let you know that you're in build mode. So anything we add to the takeoff now, it will also put into an assembly for us under the description of demo in this case. So all I would do is quickly pick up a couple of items. So if I want, say, a 2-gang switch socket, I'll add one of those to the job, and then a back box. If I pick up one of those, onto the job it goes. That'll do us. I can add some plugs and screws if I want, but for the purpose of this, that will do us. So if I end the build there, and then you can see it's added them to the job. But also, if I go back to our assembly search, there's our demo with the components. It's very easy to build up assemblies. Speeds up the time of your takeoff an awful lot. The other thing to mention here is new items. So if you want to add a range of your own to the database, or indeed if you're using it for a totally different discipline and you want to build your own database, and you can just select new item and then you can enter the quantity, give it a code. I'll call it demo, and I'll give it a description, sample. I'll put a fitting time in there. I won't put a price in for the moment. There's something I want to show you in a moment. And you can just go through and fill out any of the fields that you want to use. Now you've got two options. If I just click OK now, it will add it to the takeoff just this once, and that's as far as it will go. If I click Add to Database, it will not only add it to the takeoff at the top here, but it will put it into the database at the bottom, so I can pull it up in a few minutes' time and use it again. Now, what's really useful is if you're building up a range of products yourself, you can select to tick this Keep Open option, and then rather than keep selecting New Part all the time, once you click OK to put the new item in, you just start at the top again, enter details for the next item, OK, and the form will stay open for you so you can enter a number of items. So if I drop that onto the job, we can see it goes in and it highlights the fact that I've not got a material price in there. So it's just letting us know we need to get a price for that. A couple of items to show you at this stage. If we've forgotten to put something in and we don't want to add it to the end of the takeoff, then just select where you want to drop it. And then if you select Insert At, and it will insert the next item or items at the cursor. You can also search and replace. So if we wanted to replace, say, those MK switch sockets with something like a Volex switch socket, we can select the search, go and find the item we want, and then click Replace, and it will do a search and replace for us. So quite a few options there. So if I come out of that section, we can now see that it's populated with a little bit of detail. And then I will now move on to our preliminary cost and provisional sums. Got a couple in there just to speed things up. So the first one is plant hire, and what we're saying is I've got £200 and it's spread over all disciplines, which it means labour and material. It's going over all sections, the cost, and the tower is £200 again, but it's only going against the labour element of the lighting section. And the reason that is important is because any costs you enter as preliminaries will be split proportionately over your unit rates in the areas that you select. So the top £200 is being spread over the entire estimate, all sections, labour and material, and the tower is just being put against the labour element of the lighting section. Your customer will never see these costs. They're split over the unit rates. You can put these in either as a cost or as a percentage, whichever way you prefer. If you want to show them to your customer and you don't want to put them within the sections of the job, then if you use the list below, provisional sums can cater for all your contingency costs. You just put a description in, cost, and say where you want it against. And then when we go into our markup form, or when we run the report off, it will list them separately from the sections. So if I go to our markup form now, we've got a little form pops up. It's our filter. Now that is that special I put in, and the reason I didn't put a price in, so I wanted to show you this, it will flag by default. We set it up so that when it comes out to you, it will flag any item which doesn't have a quantity or doesn't have a cost and isn't an install only item or a piece of text. And you can get it to bring this form up automatically. It's an option within the defaults. You can get it to come up automatically anytime it goes into the markup or the report, i.e. when you're going to make a commercial decision. And then you can take a look and do any corrections you want. So if I phone up and get a price for that, say I'll put my £200 in there, and that's cleared it down. So I can carry on into my markup now, and that's just saved me losing a couple £100 on the job. So we're in the markup form, and as you can see, we've got our sections listed below in the grids below with all our figures. And at the top are where we can do our manipulation. So starting on the top here, we've got our general labour, 108 hours, we've got a rate in there, cost, a markup percentage, the amended profit, total, and the gross profit. I've only got one labour rate in here, but we could have used more if we prefer, and that would be similar to the material cost below, which you can see I've got it broken up into about 5 different groups here. You remember earlier I mentioned you can set markup groups, and this is where it comes in. So my cable, I've only got 50%. I've got 50% markup on. General materials, 40%. Lighting is 12%. Switchgear 20%, and conduits trunking 25. As I say, you can set up as many of these different groups as you want, so you can apply different markups, and then all your product ranges you can put into these different groups. So the markup percentage you can see here and the rates, these are just defaults which have been picked up from the default settings of the program, and any defaults which are picked up you can edit. So we could edit the rate and the markup and the profit, etc. For instance, if I wanted to change that labour markup to only 50%, then it updates everything for us. Similarly, with our cable, if I wanted to alter the percentage, I can, or I could just put in how much profit I want. So if I say I want £400 profit on my cable, it will mark the percentage back for us. So at the bottom of there, I have a total for all our labour and material costs. So that totals it all up. The next row along shows our preliminaries, our hidden costs, which are going to be buried in the unit rates. Next line down, if we've got a main contractor involved, we can set the 1/39th in there for main contractors. Then we have contingency provisional sums. There's that £2,000 we added in, and giving us a grand total at the bottom. The only thing to mention here is that we can, if we want, set a target price here. So if we want to set that, say, just under 1,500, we could, and then it'll work all these back for us. So any figures we set here will go through all the different sections because we've got all sections highlighted here. But if we select an individual section, like the lighting section, for instance, then we can apply any particular markups and margins we want just to that individual section, or any of the other sections if we want. Right, so just before we move on to our report, I'll just mention one other thing here. This is just a small little estimate, but if we had a large estimate of a few thousand hours, we might want to use the labour matrix, the gang rates in here. Separate video that covers it on our website if you want to see more detail, but essentially what it allows you to do is you look at the job, and if there's a few thousand hours on there and you might have time penalties for finishing late, then you're not going to be working on a rate of £35 an hour, especially if you're working away. There's going to be lots of other factors coming into play. You might have to get subcontractors in, so it's going to cost you probably a higher rate for those. You might have to pay your own guys overtime, so you'll have a number of different rates you're using on a number of different hours on the job. You might have different skill levels, technician on there, approved apprentice, labourers, approved electricians, many different rates. So what this will actually do is allow you to pick your different skill levels, say how much time they've been spent on the job at the different rates, i.e. time and a half, etc. It also allows you to enter your travel costs either as a GRB rate or as a mileage rate. And if you're working away from home, then you'll probably have some lodging costs to be incorporated there. It all goes into the mix, and then what it will come up with is an hourly rate that it will cost to employ those particular skill levels on that particular job, wherever it is. So a lot more accurate on the labour costing. Right, so if we move on to our reporting, on our report screen, there's basically three sections: presentation reports, material lists, management reports. Management reports are, you can get copies of everything on the estimating, so material, labour, times, cost, markup, etc. They're internal reports. Then the material lists, you might use those to send off your wholesaler to get consolidated lists of materials with or without the cost. If we work from a bill of quantities, there's a few bill of quantities reports we can get on the system. And then the other ones are our rates, everything from selling rates for the section, selling rates for assemblies, and selling rates for unit rates. So we're probably going to send off a tender summary or quotation to start with. Well, I'm going to show you the quotation report because that includes the tender summary. If I select the settings here, then a little sidebar scrolling for us, and you can see we've got options to display to the screen, the printer, file, or email if we've got a Windows MAPI client set up. If we export to a file, then we can save as a PDF file or CSV and a couple of other options. And I'll just show you a few options before we run the report here. So on the quotation reports, there's a few options we can set. We can set the letter to be formal or informal. We can show a page of exclusions if we want, or just tick that if you want to exclude them. I'll leave them on just to show you. And also terms and conditions. Quotation letter, we've got a default in the system, but if we want, we can edit that now. We can go into here and edit it, or you can just copy and paste one in. The other thing, just to show you quickly, is you can do attachments. If you're going to email it off, you can attach files. Like I've got a health and safety PDF attached here. I've got some shortcuts to different files, or you can just scroll your Windows file system using the Find. So just going back to our report again, if I select the quotation, and you can display them at 2 or 3 decimal places. I'll alter that to 2 decimal places. And if I run the quotation report now, you can see here's our quotation letter. So it's saying, Dear Mr. King. If I'd had it set as informal, it would have said, Dear Paul. Couple of things to mention while we're just on the screen. This is our quotation letter and is overlaid by our PriceLinks company letterhead. All your presentation reports can be overlaid with a JPEG, so you can overlay them with your company letterhead, and also on the cover letter you can scan in a signature to personalize it a bit more. All right, so rolling on to the tender summary, here's our quotation. So we've got our main house, ground floor, first floor, annex. So that's the importance of setting it up with your sections. It shows how you want to group the figures and what you want to show to your customer. So I've got subtotals for each of those group headers, and then I've got the price for each takeoff sheet below that. giving us a subtotal, and then there's our provisional sums. I've got included a main contracts there. I should have switched that off. I'll show you switch it off in a second. But normally if you've got a main contractors, you can show or not show it. Giving us the total there, and then that line there is a piece of free format text that you can enter at the bottom of your report. You can include it or exclude it, it's optional. There's our page of exclusions that I selected to add, and also our terms and conditions that I selected to add. So if I just come out of there, what I should have done was turn off the main contractors. We didn't want to show the main contractors discount on that, as I'm not using them. So once you send that off, they'll probably come back and say, can we have a schedule of rates? And it's just how much detail you want to show them. You can show all of them with or without quantities. I'm just going to run the assembly report before, which gives you a composite schedule of rates. So for instance, in distribution, you see I've got one item in there, consumer unit, one of those. And then going down to our demo section, you can see in there that switch socket and that trunking run I put in. So we've got 100 meters, 1078 a meter, and there's the extended total. We can also, if we want, show the unit rate. So if I run the unit rate on that same job, then you'll see now that consumer unit is broken down into all the various components. So it gives the quantities for the different items, selling price for an individual item, and extended cost for the extended amount. And scrolling down to our demo section, again there's our switch socket broken down with the outlet and the back box, 12 each of them, the individual unit rate and the extended total, and the same for our trunking run, all the bits broken down there. So lots of options on the unit rates, and the split rate will split it down into material and labour elements. If you do work for local authorities, they'll be asking you for that. This has just been a short overview of the contract estimating. If you want to see the longer version or other videos, please go to our website, pricelinks.co.uk, where you can also find all the prices for the software. Thank you very much for your time.